meeting to order?
You're in charge today, Dr. Clemente.
Okay, good. All right.
If you do a fine job, you may actually be the next REMAC chair.
I'll be sure not to. Okay. Approval of the previous minutes should be in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Motion and a second from Dr. Lynch. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Correspondence log. It's attached. There is a late-breaking edition. It's a letter from the Big Lakes Remsco announcing their new elections. Wade Schwab is the chairman, and Steve Cooley is the vice chairman. And they are going to make Wade and Steve the primary voting member and the alternate for this council, respectively. CMAC SEMSCO report. Dr. Walters, Dr. Barter, Dr. Tackett's, anything to add? Okay.
Yeah, I can go, Brian.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you want. So, just a quick update from the CMAC and that. There was not a whole, it was actually a very short meeting, not a whole lot of controversy or discussion there. There were some ALS protocols from New York City and Suffolk that went through. They decided to rescind some old policies that the Bureau is going to be taking offline, take over outdated on biphasic AEDs, which you could call standard, polycythemic hemophilia, things that are now standard core content of basically education. So that was a big thing. There was really the only kind of discussion was, the hemorrhage control protocol was discussed and approved at the previous meeting. There was some discussion on the wording and the placement of tourniquets and things, some discussion from the staff, and so we had been involved in that offline before, and basically the hemorrhage control policy that was passed before that's been distributed will stay. There's just some clarification of the wording. So if there is a life-threatening hemorrhage that is identified, you can go right to tourniquet or wound packing depending on where the injury is. That was in the previous protocol, the one that was approved a couple months ago. The only thing that's changed is the wording will say, apply a tourniquet at least 3 inches above the wound, not over a joint. And then in the same box, it'll say, in an unstable scene, or if the extent of the wound cannot be fully assessed in the field, the tourniquet should be placed as proximal on the limb as possible, high and tight. And that's just to clarify that in a tactical situation, an active shooter event, MCI situation, so that would be an active shooter event, which is where everybody kind of gets hung up. But in any unstable situation, which could be an MCI, it could be somebody pinned in a car and you can't fully examine their whole leg and you're extricating them and you see bleeding, all you can get to is the proximal area of the limb, and that's where you put the tourniquet. So that was that discussion, that wording was discussed and passed. And then also on that protocol was the wording that if you do apply a tourniquet, that they should be transported to a trauma center. And that's a big thing, especially down in the southern tier or maybe even in the, Big Lakes area. We place a tourniquet on, we shouldn't be going to our local hospital. We want to get them to a trauma center because they're going to need trauma surgeons, vascular surgeons to repair that and evaluate that as soon as possible. We don't want to delay them in getting to a trauma center because really we talk about safe tourniquet times of being 2 hours or less, hopefully. So, other than that, there was, we did have an offline meeting after the medical standards with the physicians and the Bureau, and I think some of the things we've all discussed is finding a little frustrating with the Bureau or things that we had some issues with. They actually clarified and really wanted to kind of clear the air a little bit, have a better working relationship with the physicians. They kind of went into some of the state politics and things that they're doing behind the scenes, things that they agree with and want to change, that we all, I think, assume is their fault, but really maybe coming from other places and instructions that they're meeting. And they basically were asking us for help in getting past some of those roadblocks. So I think that will improve some communications and things there. And other than that, I don't think there were any real big things. There were some updates on check-in checks, which a lot of agencies in our area have signed on to. I think they have so far 236 agencies overall, 17 of the REMACs across the state law, and 1,245. So, so that's it. There's some discussion on the collaborative group, but I'll take that for a little bit later.
Great. And part of the packet is the CMAC SEMSCO notes. The only other thing I think that's particularly noteworthy is just there's an update on the transition of the new CLI, CIC initiatives the state has. Do you have anything under REMAC Chairman report, Brian?
No.
Okay. Trauma Nurse Advisory Committee, Beth?
The RTAC committee met on February 3rd.
Beth,
Yeah, I'm
you
sorry.
come up to the phone, please. They won't be able to hear you.
The RTAC committee met on February 3rd. We discussed the regional PI project of trauma destination times. Data continued to show that the hospitals outside of 45 minutes away from the trauma centers actually got the patients there faster than the patients within 45 minutes. We'll continue to monitor that on a case-by-case basis. We did look at New York State Sparks data, which is trauma admission data that goes to every hospital in the region. The average age is 77, and the average post-admission destination is a skilled facility, 95% of the time. Pre-notification statistics, pre-notification for trauma, priority 1 and 2, fell by about 2.5%. We are encouraging EMS to please notify as soon as possible when they're bringing in a trauma patient to the trauma centers. Use the triage desk phone number or MERS and give us the appropriate information.
Any questions for Beth? Thank you. Nurse Advisory Committee, is Chris here, or anybody have anything for them? Okay. Program agency reports, Lake Plains.
I just have a few approvals that are on the agenda, quite a few trainings that we did. Going to be having some WREMAC preceptor classes coming out into the near future. And also another thing is Newfane ER that concerns Niagara County, effective midnight last night, this morning. ER is closed and it's moved to an urgent care now. So all the transfers in Niagara County, I have to go to Lockport. And we have elections at the Big Lakes on March 9th. New chair is Wade Schwab, vice chair Steve Cooley, treasurer is Cheryl Comfort. I'm looking forward to progressing on that. And then at the last meeting, we were asked the program agencies to get together about the WREMAC approvals, which is attached to our full report. Everybody throughout the Big Lakes is, of course, PAD approved. We just have 19% that do not have EPI approval, and continues to increase after that from albuterol being, I think it is 23%, blood glucometry 32%, and nasal Narcan, which is 42% of who do not have those approvals. And we're getting some more on board though. And that's about it.
Great. Any questions for Lake Plains? STEMS? Oh, I'm sorry, Jen, are you on the phone?
Hello. We attended all of our county council meetings and also the RTAC meeting, our Sheriff's Council meeting, and the Western New York Health Emergency Preparedness Coalition meeting. Just a few late PCRs to report. I will list the agencies that are live and implementing with the PCR system. We hosted a management of the burn patient presentation on January 26th with Beth Moses, and had a huge turnout with Olean General Hospital was live, and with Jones Memorial Hospital and All-Star EMS agency. We held a EPCR systems presentation on February 9th. Mike Taylor came down from the state and went over the general EPCR system and also the upcoming Genesis version 3 implementation. He went over image trends and answered a lot of questions that people may have had. We held a CLI course on February 20th and 21st at Olean General Hospital, and also that was All-Star Distance Learning. Dr. Molabarfu, we came and presented a cardiology presentation for us. We had almost 80 providers attend that one as well. It was a great presentation. Upcoming events, we've rescheduled the Olean General Hospital provider skills fair. This looks like it's going to be the last weekend in April. We had the one in All-Star last weekend, and we have Crossroads coming up May 6th and 7th, and then the All-Star North Dunkirk site May 14th. Upcoming events, we have the 10th Annual STEM Spring Training Conference, April 15th and 16th. We're still fast, so if you're interested in attending, get your registration and if you have questions or anything about the conference,
question for STEMS? UBMD? Scott?
The report's been circulated. Just a reminder, we have our conferences coming up on Friday, April 15th, Friday night, and then Saturday the 16th at the Millennium Hotel in Cheektowaga. We're just really asking that everybody continue to support these local conferences. There's a lot of effort that goes into them. Really, they're break-evens. Actually, they tend to be money losers. And we just hope to break even with these initiatives, but we really do have a lot of time and effort that's invested in these things. And people are always looking for unique ways to get education for CME-based recertification in particular. And these are the types of things that providers are encouraged, expect is maybe a strong word, but really encouraged to attend these kinds of conferences to get your continuing education. The last thing you want to do is hear the same, endocrine lecture over and over and over and over again every 3 years. This is your opportunity to get different types of training so that you're getting well-rounded information toward your recertification. Specifically for our conference, and I'm sure for Donna's too, but you can get credit towards your core content, which is kind of a big deal because that's stuff that has to be approved by New York State CIC for your training. So it gives providers an opportunity to get a pretty strong breadth of knowledge and from different presenters. So we're just asking the medical directors to please, please, please make sure that you're encouraging the providers in your agencies to attend these local conferences. We have credential and CME review for the WREMAC that's going to be forthcoming for Eggertsville, Harris Hill, Mill Grove, North Amherst, and Warsaw. Those are the next 5 agencies that were randomly selected. To date, we've done more than half of the agencies in the Wyoming Erie region, actual site visits and providing feedback to those services. We had 2 training programs, the EMS Officer Training Course and then a WREMAC Preceptor Training Course, where we trained almost 100 people in the officer course and then another over 30 in the preceptor training course for the WREMAC. Women and Children's Hospital of Buffalo has a program entitled The Approach to the Pediatric Trauma for the EMS professional. There are numerous opportunities for providers to attend this training throughout the region. We've been circulating that information. CPAP for BLS providers did a training last night in Eden, and there were 28 providers there, and then we have another one that's been scheduled and will be pushed out in Elma on the 31st of March from 7 to 10. That's open to any providers who want to go to that. There will also be additional opportunities. We're working with LVAC right now to secure a date with them. We have a number of approvals which are in there. Just a couple of key points from CMAC SEMSCO because I think there's some things that were not in Dr. Walter's report that have relevance to some folks who were in the room here. First of all, the New York State BLS protocols. They are now on the state's website as a combined document, so that really there's no new content that's in the protocol. They just took the 08 protocols and they took all of the changes that were addendums and they just took those new protocols, put them into the 08 protocols and took out the stuff that didn't apply anymore. So in other words, you don't have to download 18 different files to come up with one document. You can just download the BLS protocols and you will have all that information. The one thing that the Bureau did note on there is that there are going to be a number of changes that are going to occur to that protocol document that really we're not going to know are going to happen. It's just as a protocol is revised, they're going to this decision tree format, which I have my own opinion about, but they're going to that style format for the protocols. We're going to start to see that. We saw it with the hemorrhage protocol, and we're going to see that with other protocols as they evolve over the years. There were 2 CMAC advisories that were rescinded, 9701, which is emergency care of persons with hemophilia, and 9702, which is the biphasic automated external defibrillator. They were outdated policies, so they've rescinded them. The links are still on the Bureau's website, but they're no longer active. BLS units to be able to acquire 12 lead ECGs in the field. This was actually, it got the thumbs up at the last meeting, but it was never formally approved. And what they've done is they've pushed this to the WREMACs to come up with the plan for administering it within the region. So BLS units, now this, what they didn't want this is not a mandate, BLS units do not have to do this, but they saw opportunity in that there may be BLS providers and paramedic level services that already have a 12 lead monitor, and they may want to utilize that monitor to acquire 12 leads and transmit to help progress the care. The other thing is that there's, just like with waveform capnography, you can buy standalone 12 lead devices. If your department wants to throw the $2 or $3 grand at it, you can buy these simplistic devices that will transmit to a center to let them know that, for interpretation. The idea is that BLS providers are not going to be interpreting, they're only going to be acquiring. And so as a region, we have to come up with how we're going to address this as services want to seek this approval.
Is there written guidance from the state how to do that, or just go forth?
At this point, it's go forth.
It'll be, we'll do it, and then everybody will copy it.
So because,
Well, so I can't say they won't put a policy out, though.
okay, so,
Yeah, I thought the state was supposed to come out with a policy, and then until they did, people weren't able to go live.
Well, that was, I don't know, I didn't get that sentiment from SEMSCO. For other people who were there, maybe you can object, but that was not the sentiment that I got from SEMSCO.
I think there was a pilot project done somewhere else
Originally.
in New York State.
that then became a...
No, because it was a scope issue. A long time ago, they had done it.
Right.
But this is a more recent thing saying that it's really not anything more than putting stickers on anybody, and therefore there's no scope issues. And
Right. So, a couple things, I guess.
I thought at the meeting, not in the last meeting, but I thought the meeting before, I thought they discussed the state was going to put out a policy, but what I'll do is I will reach out to Andy and clarify that before we move forward. Okay.
So, yeah, so I think we should do a couple things. One is I think we should have a subcommittee led by Dr. Ennis and Dr. Tanaka to figure this out for us. I think one of the challenges is because we don't have a centralized medical control area, I'm concerned about papering the hospitals with normal BLS 12 leads. And I also don't think that the median physician interpretation of a 12 lead is far superior than the median computer interpretation of a 12 lead. And so I would think that the ideal situation, although I'm not sure we could operationalize it, would be to obtain a 12 lead and let the monitor read it and go from there. So that is not an official position of anything, but is there at least a motion to create a subcommittee to look at this before the next meeting? Thank you, Josh. Is there a second?
I'm not naming any individuals.
No, only two,
Only two.
to think about it. And Alex seconds it, so that's very nice of him. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Hey, Brian, just one point. I think there was a discussion at the CMAC level about they wanted to have an actual physician reviewing as opposed to just the computer generation. I don't disagree with what you're saying in this day and age, but I think if we have a subcommittee, one of the things we need to look at is maybe it's not the same exact protocol in all 8 counties here. I think there's some differences in the southern tier. There's only one PCI center versus up in Erie County, for example, or something like that. And those are things we're going to have to kind of
Right. So I think the challenge is,
fish out in that way.
the challenge is we know what the discussion was at the CMAC. We don't know what their paper position is, right? And so depending on what their paper position is, will determine kind of how to approach this. But even when there's only one PCI center down south, you're acquiring a 12 lead. If the 12 lead is negative, you're going to go to the community hospital. So where are you going to send the 12 lead? Are you going to still send it to the
It was
PCI?
my
You know what I mean?
understanding that we would have to have
Right, and it may
a,
be different between counties.
Right.
that we would have to get an MOU with the physician who is willing to read those, or an ER that is willing to accept those.
So these are the things that need to be worked out.
Absolutely. It's
I could see the
definitely-
difficulty here being, again, it has to do with facilities and capabilities, but if you're the local hospital and something's borderline, they're gonna tell it to bump past. There's a lot of stuff that's gonna, I think if you're gonna have anyone interpret, unfortunately, it's gonna have to be the actual PCI center who's gonna request them to bypass. Because if you send it to the local hospital and their gestalt is that, well, I don't want this here, we're going to be sending a lot of unnecessary chest pain patients with minor EKG changes, but they don't want to deal with it there because it's the liability. That's what I would worry about, which means
Totally agree.
those of us at PCI centers will be taking lots of phone
So
calls.
this is the stuff that we have to ferret out before we can even think about moving forward. But we need to know what the state's written guidance is before we.
In the written guidance,
use too much
maybe
brain
what
power.
brought this to light, the fact that the motion was never passed.
Gotcha.
And so that's what
Gotcha.
caused this whole thing to resurface.
Gotcha.
We hinted at the CLI and CIC instructor exams. What they've done is they've removed the requirement for CLIs, CICs, and those desiring to become certified CLIs and CICs. You had to previously take the provider exam, score at least 85% on it, and then you were eligible for certification. After you completed the other requirements, they've removed that, and they have come out with an instructor test. In fact, as a instructor, you can't even take the provider exam unless you're doing it as a part of a refresher program. And so, it's a 50-question instructor score that's based on instructional theory, not on the care of patients. The nice part about this is that number one, it's a take the test once and you're done. You don't have to do it every 3 years. You just take your updates and do that. But the second part to it is that completely lost that thought. Anyway, it'll pop back in here in a minute. So anyway, that's going to start with the May exams. So if your instructor card expires in May of this year or after, you will have to take the instructor test. It'll be offered every single month. You can schedule it just like you would the instructor score. Oh, the nice thing about this is that we'll no longer have paramedics that are only BLS CICs. Your certification, or your teaching certification, will coincide with your New York State provider certification. That was the other thing I forgot. The CLI curriculum was revised, and there's no longer pre-screening for CLI courses. It is basically done within the program. They'll teach how to teach. Essentially, they want you to have a course sponsor affiliation before you're ever even getting into CLI classes, and that course sponsor should not be recommending people to become CLIs who can't even do the skills themselves. And so there's a post-test as a part of the CLI program, and they're asking that it be done between 20 and 24 hours in length in lieu of that pre-screening. The last thing is community paramedicine. I don't believe this was touched on, but the community paramedicine bill failed. It passed the assembly, but then the Home Care Association and the Nursing Association blocked it in the Senate. And so it failed, and they're not going to reintroduce it. What they're going to do is they're going to try to piggyback with the Home Care Association on a pilot program that they have going on right now and expand that program into to include paramedics.
And then your program agency report added Twin City under the list of check and inject services and CPAP services, and so we'll add that to the agenda also. Any questions for Scott? Okay. Before we go further,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
Do we know, in regards to the CLI and CIC new format exam, if all of the CLIs and CICs know what book or what resources they should be studying in preparation for this exam?
When the policy change comes out, which is, it sounded like April 1st, when the policy change comes out, they're going to be putting a study guide out along with it, which will theoretically be the tool you need.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, before we go further, we have a quorum locally, so we didn't ask on the phone, but are there any other members on the phone other than Dr. Walters?
Rich Alman.
Okay, thank you both. ALS protocol, other than the collaborative protocols, is there any ALS protocol things to go over? No? Brian? Yeah.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
A group brought this up to me, one of my agencies. Lidocaine is currently out of the medications, although for IO access, it's recommended that, I mean, half the patients are in cardiac arrest, but they do recommend an injection of lidocaine before giving that. Is there something we should be looking at our next set of protocols to reintroduce lidocaine?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I have an opinion on this.
I found it hard to believe.
We do a lot of things in emergency medicine that are painful because we need to get them done. They're innately painful. So when we're using that route of medication administration or fluid bolusing or whatever, that skill should be reserved most likely for the very, very sick. And I think just to add a drug to the formulary because the manufacturer wants to sell more IOs to encourage, conscious IO use, I think is a bit of a slippery slope for us to get up to. So, for what it's worth, that's my opinion.
Okay, I mean, I guess I somewhat disagree, only because I pretty tightly regulate who gets an IO, who doesn't, and reviews those cases pretty tightly in my own agency. I would not look to expand the subset of people who got it. I understand there's definitely a risk associated with it, but I would think it's a good idea for those few non-obtunded patients who get it, or for a patient who's obtunded when you put the IO in and then isn't obtunded anymore afterwards, right? Someone who gets shocked for a cardiac arrest and then starts coming around and has an IO in them.
But I believe that the lidocaine is actually only intended for the
infusion
pain from the bolusing into the marrow. So it's not that once the IO is in place that it's a painful thing to have, but that it was the initial bolusing and displacement of the marrow that caused the discomfort through all the military research. So it's really just the initial phase of putting it in that you're causing this excruciating pain while you're given the first 10 cc blast to open up that space. Because I think we've all had patients who have had IOs in that woke up that didn't seem to care that they had IOs in their leg at the end of why it's one infusion.
What does the collaborative protocol say? Do you guys know?
So I agree with you, Brian. I think that there are a subset of patients that we have that might be awake, that may wake up, that may benefit from this. It is already in the collaborative protocol, and I would say that we don't add any new protocols in general until we adopt the collaboratives. I think it's going to come up later. I think that we've talked about moving to that. And their time frame for passing the collaboratives, we can talk about later, but they're hoping to present them at the May CMAC already. So, so it will be addressed in there, and I think that we fall in line with that protocol as we adopt those when we talk to them.
That was your point, or do you have another?
Yeah, lidocaine does appear in the collaborative protocols in both the analgesia for IO and for an antiarrhythmic under medical treatment options. I believe it's throughout the protocol on that.
Okay. All right. QI subcommittee. Alex? No report. Old business. A group of people met as a subcommittee to discuss the MTDS dispatch protocols. We need to go through all their recommendations. They did go line through line and make individual recommendations for the new version 13. There was an initial question about, depending on the group, the work that the group did, would they create something that was sort of like a universal tool that could be applied to other systems? I think what the group came out with ended up actually being fairly MPDS specific. So we will put those together and offer them at the next meeting, and we'll get it out ahead of time if people have comments. New business.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah,
Brian, real quick.
Yeah.
I'll just put this out there that in Chautauqua County, we had a meeting this week about reviewing our EMD protocols, and they use that put down here. And we may be updating some of those and relooking at those. So if anybody uses APCO, and this is not a REMAC endeavor, but if anybody uses APCO and wants to be involved with that or see what we come up with afterwards, we're happy to share that down the road.
Thank you. The next REMAC meeting will be May 11th. It'll be at Olney General Hospital. It was moved from its previous date because its previous date was in the middle of EMS week. And lots of agencies have EMS week things going on already, so we wanted to not add one more thing. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Josh Lynch. Dr. McGee nominates Josh Lynch. We won't even ask him. We'll just address it next meeting.
I decline.
Don't be so hasty.
Actually, you know, you're doing such a good job running this meeting. I would like.
Let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. Naloxone study. So this is a sort of an EMS study, sort of not an EMS study, and so I wanted to bring it up to tell the group sort of what our vision is for this. In the past, the majority of EMS research that's been done has been what's called retrospective research, so looking at charts that have already been written. ECMC is starting a large, what will probably take half a year or more study about patients who arrive at that hospital after receiving naloxone and what happens with their ED care. However, and it's prospective, so forward-looking. As part of this study, we also are going to look to obtain EMS data. So we're going to ask providers who arrive at ECMC with a patient who received naloxone pre-hospitally, whether it be from them or a citizen or other first responder, to complete a brief questionnaire. Okay? And so we're just going to ask, and we'll put out more information as closer, we're going to ask individual agencies just to be willing to promote that within their department and providers to fill that out should they arrive. We're not asking for any care to change. We're not asking for any individual agencies to do anything other than what they normally do, which is bring patients to hospitals, give them good care, and if a hospital requests a copy of the PCR, provide that PCR. Again, we're not asking crews to preferentially bring their patients to any location. We're not asking them to change their care in any way. We're just asking them to fill out a brief questionnaire about the care that was provided once they arrive at that hospital. And this will be at ECMC only for now. It'll probably start in the next 2 months or so. Any questions or concerns about that as I just sort of laid it out? Okay, it's a big lift ED study, and adding EMS to it gets the possibility of having more interesting data and potentially doing an offshoot study of that and showing that we have the ability to do something prospective, which has always been a challenge in EMS in general. So that, yes?
Just an idea that we used, possibly if the people who are using it, they could put it in their medical record that if they use Narcan before they close the chart, the survey would come up.
So that's a really good idea for when we do agency-specific stuff, but because this is a hospital-specific thing, we actually, the way it's being designed, nothing's going to be pushed to the agencies, since so many different agencies are going to be potentially involved. So if there will be, the crew that shows up will get a piece of paper to fill out, because all the data has to live at ECMC because of the way the IRB is written. That's a really good suggestion for other stuff, but it won't quite work for what we're doing. We'll skip over the collaborative protocols at the end. ATLS, what's the ATLS?
I'll bring it up real quick. We had talked ways back about some of the flight nurses talking about some of the outfit suit courses that they have to have, and if they take some of the pediatric courses, do they have to take, PALS or something? And I know that there's some discussion about some of those maybe having different scopes and different relevancy to providers in the field versus practicing in the hospital. The one specific question that was brought up by one of the flight nurses right now, who's also a nurse practitioner, is regarding accepting only ATLS, not talking about PALS and bears and apples and all those other things, but talking about just accepting ATLS in lieu of PHTLS. I think that the scope and the discussion there is really not so much, we're not backboarding now anyway, but we're not really talking about so much care in the field of PHTLS, but a lot of the how we approach it, fluids, how much fluid, all those things are clinical decision. So my personal kind of bias is towards allowing that and changing our policy to allow PHTLS, ITLS, or ATLS for those that take it, with the caveat that I know paramedics can audit that ATLS class, in which case they're not doing skills and they're not taking the test. I would submit that should not qualify, but for someone who is an actual advanced provider who does take ATLS, fulfill the requirements on the skills and the didactic testing, that we accept that in addition to or in lieu of ITLS and PHTLS.
Beth Moses.
if they're not a nurse practitioner, they can't take ATLS. They have to take ATCN. ATLS, is for physicians in advanced practice only. Auditing can be done by medics. ATCN is for RNs. I might suggest there is a certification course for flight nurses through the BCEN. Maybe that's the route you want to take. But RNs that are not advanced practice cannot do ATLS.
So
I guess this.
I would say that I think who's allowed to take the course is beyond my knowledge base, but I would think ATCN or ATLS complete certifications would meet or exceed the needs that we're looking for, and should be viewed as comparable. I don't know what other people think. Is that a problem? Other thoughts? Anybody?
You know, I think a very practical way of looking at this is just, as long as we're not compromising the objective of the requirement in our policy. So, you know, it's okay to accept, you know, ATCN or ATLS, that's fine, but, you know, what's the biggest issue we have with, we're talking about trauma here, with trauma, and that's, it's really the assessment, the initial management. And so, do these programs meet the same objective for that first 15-20 minutes of assessing and managing the trauma patient in the pre-hospital environment? If it does, then probably the rest of it's semantics. But if they don't meet that objective, and probably, you know, I mean, realistically, you can't speak in generalities, but the reality, I think, is that the majority of the people who would even be eligible to take ATCN or ATLS are already at a very advanced level. I'm not familiar with ATCN. I certainly, ATLS itself, I know who can take that, and that would definitely, in my opinion, count. Nothing against anybody else, but I'm not really familiar with ATCN. I would submit that we really need to pay attention to that assessment and appropriate pre-hospital management.
Beth or Malachi, could you speak to that?
ATCN and ATLS have the same lecture component. You actually take it together. The courses are run concurrently. What's different between the two courses is they split out for skill stations and testing stations. It's the resuscitative phase of a trauma. So it's typically your ER phase of trauma. Yeah, pre-hospital stuff is discussed throughout the lectures, absolutely. But there aren't skill stations that are pre-hospital based. It's like being in the nurse in the trauma room when the patient comes in, or in a community hospital when the patient comes in. That's what ATCN is focused on.
This is exactly my point. Is somebody who's taught ITLS for almost 20 years now. The biggest issue we have is getting people to make the right decision at the appropriate time. And so in an in-hospital setting, you have a team of people that is as many people as you can call on the phone and resources to come in. It's not the case in the pre-hospital environment. And that is the objective. The didactic stuff in ITLS is lovely. But the real bang in that course is, it should be the assessment and the integration of other things and resources that are often limited. And that's what I'm concerned about by going down the road with some of these other things. I'm not saying they don't, but it's just my concern.
Dr. Lynch?
I think that I agree with Beth that the didactic component is very helpful, and in the skill stations, I'm sure the other physicians can chime in, there are assessment portions of the skill stations. So I think that if somebody goes through either one of those courses, they are meeting the educational objectives and also the testing objectives that Scott has mentioned about being able to appropriately assess a patient, but it being the primary and secondary assessments. So I would motion that we accept those two classes.
Are there any other, so there's a motion, are there a second?
I guess my
Or more discussion?
I'll second it, Brian.
Okay, let's have more discussion then. More discussion.
No, I was gonna add, I guess my point is that if you have those courses, you're working somewhere where you need those courses, you're probably in a trauma center every day, or you wouldn't be taking that course. Which means that you're doing patient assessment and seeing a high volume of patients more than the volunteer who takes ITLS and sees one trauma every 6 months. You probably see 2 a day. So I guess the assumption is, in my mind, if you have to take those courses as part of your job and you have them, you probably work in a place where you see more trauma than the average Joe anyways, so how could we not?
You've self-selected yourself already.
Yeah, you know what I mean, you're getting day in, day out assessment. I guess the argument can be made that a nurse could take that course and not work in a trauma center and maybe not have the skills, but I think that'd be a lot of work and around. You're taking the course either way, is the way I see it.
And though the nurses that are taking that course may not work in a trauma center, but they're working at hospitals where they're evaluating trauma patients, which is probably equal or more
The
valuable.
nurses don't have to do skills. There are no skills for the nurses in that course.
I would agree with accepting it.
Other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All in favor of including ATLS or ATCN among the other things that meet the trauma certification requirement, I guess. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, carries. Okay, in mass, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 12, number 13, number 14, number 15, with the addition of Twin City to number 11 and Twin City to number 12.
Hey, Brian, just so you don't forget, are we going to come back to the collaborative discussion?
Oh, yep, we're coming back. We're saving that for the end. I'm sorry.
That paper I
Okay, very good.
And there's a paper with additions.
Just verify.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to that. All in favor, I'm sorry, is there a motion to accept 7 through 15 with those amendments in mass? Dr. Lynch, second. Todd, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, carries. At the last, so I have one addition to new business. At the last meeting, remember there was, we clarified, because Mercy EMS had gotten an approval that we couldn't find in the minutes, and so we wanted to clarify that. We have another example of that. And so Henry Lamothe has more than the 10 agencies. He's had them for quite some time. He's not looking to add any new agencies, but rather just to put in the minutes clarification that he's approved to have more than 10 agencies. I have a list of those agencies. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 21 departments on this list. But none of these are new. All of these are things that have been approved one at a time. And as far as anyone can tell, we think we approved him a while ago to exceed that 10. We just can't find that in the minutes anywhere. If there's no objection.
Brian, I believe we did. I believe he did have a waiver in the past.
Yeah, we're assuming he did. We just can't find it anywhere. So we're just trying to put it in the minutes to clarify it. Is there a motion to allow Dr. Lamothe to continue to exceed the minimum of the maximum 10 agencies? Todd and Alex, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you.
No.
Is there any other new business other than the collaborative protocols that people would like to discuss in this meeting? Yes.
I won't make this a long discussion today. Just receiving, when units call in for online medical direction, we've had some recent instances where the agency calls one facility and then they get direction from that facility. They're told to go to a different facility. Then they call into that other facility and the other facility gives them online medical direction to go somewhere else. So my thought, I don't think it's really addressed in our protocols, is whose medical direction stands then? Is it the first facility? Is it the second facility? I don't know if there's any thoughts. Certainly I can look in to see if there's anything around the country to see if there's any precedent for this.
In this case, why was the second facility called in the discussion was pitched as they were looking for medical direction, or the second facility was called to give them a heads up that they were bringing the patient in?
In the most recent example, it was because they were told to go, a company was told to go to hospital number 2. They then called hospital number 2 to tell them they were coming over the med control phone and got a new set of directions. That's different than pure shopping, right? But it's still problematic.
So I think that Hospital 2 it needs to be clear to Hospital 2 that incoming ambulance A has already received medical directions.
Are we going to need a diagram?
From Dr. Alpha. But I think that, I think I may know this case, and that it needs to be pitched to number 2 that you're not calling for medical direction and you're really not going to take medical direction. You're just, it's more of a less of an, I'm letting you know we're coming, period. So I don't understand how.
Does Hospital 1 assume the liability for whatever, because if Hospital 2 is the the receiving hospital, has whatever they need that Hospital 1 didn't have, and they say, no, it doesn't need to come here, I'm telling you, this is not in the patient's best interest, I see these patients every day, and they say, to hell with you, we're bypassing, we were told to bypass, who's taking the liability at that point? Because if the patient dies and shows up dead at Hospital 2, that's bad news if you took a phone call. And so it has to be the agency or the first hospital. I guess that's my concern is that.
I think it's both. I think it's the person who picked up the phone and gave medical direction to go to the closest hospital, which presumably.
To bypass the closest hospital. It's bypassing the closest hospital is the issue.
When
the closest hospital bypasses.
But we need to think of the bigger picture.
No,
right?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, usually it's not.
Right. Typically this goes the other way. Right.
The rules on TALA are you should be able to stabilize any patient at any emergency room, and we only bypass for very specific situations.
I don't want to talk about the individual case. Yeah. Big picture.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The rule is any local emergency department in New York State should be able to manage any patient for a short period of time.
I think
so. Bypassing is only when the patient is stable enough, and or there's a service not available at that hospital that must be done. So that's where it gets a little sticky when the second hospital doesn't agree that they should bypass. And it's a liability issue.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, that.
I think if the transporting agency called medical direction, the person that answered it is assuming they're calling for medical direction. If it was a heads-up phone call, it should have gone through MERS or to the triage desk, not gone on the medical direction line. Report should not be given on a medical direction.
That confuses the issue. If medical direction, if the medical direction line, which has been called, to give a heads up on a patient. Because when you answer the medical direction phone, you're in the mindset of, I'm going to give this person medical direction.
Right.
Right.
Whereas if you call the secretary to say, hey, we're coming in, patient, we got medical direction out of Hospital 1, and we're coming to you, we'll see you at 5. I think that conversation starts a ball rolling in a totally different direction than, hi, medical direction line, what can I help you with?
Yeah.
I can talk, we can talk about it.
Yeah, let's put this on the list for old business for the next meeting, and I'm sure we'll all talk more about it.
Yeah, this can expand out of control once we dig into it. But we've had an instance where a crew called one hospital for medical direction to cease resuscitation, and that patient arrived at a second hospital.
I think
so. We really have to think about maybe talking about point of destination medical command, and I don't think that verbiage or vernacular is in our current protocol or in the collabs. Does anyone know? I don't recall seeing point of destination medical command.
In effect, I mean that's what's going on in most of Erie County is that, with exceptions, obviously. Okay.
Yeah, it seems like the issue with that, we find that pre-hospital providers call the people they're most familiar with. So ECMC, for instance, is pretty easy to talk to. You call them, and I'm not saying that they were having to say no, continue resuscitation and transport, and then, for the protocol, they have to go to the closest facility. So then that's where it gets weird, and providers, I think, do need that outline where it says, call the facility that you would intend to transport to. But then if you get the patient back, then that changes things, because then you would go to, someone with, center that can take care of a 7-year post-arrest, something to that extent.
Our agency uses point of destination, but our medical director is out of U of R and is okay with that. He says if I'm going to Buffalo General, I should call Buffalo General.
It's a little hard to hear some of the conversation. Brian, could you just summarize what the issue is?
So the issue was what to do when two different medical control hospitals are giving seemingly conflicting orders to the same ambulance. And around the room, different scenarios that were discussed, and the difference between destination versus true base station and medical direction. I think there are some cases where in the past providers have clearly been shopping for the answer that they want, but then, which is not acceptable, especially when a crew doesn't make it really clear that they've already gotten a no somewhere. But then there are other situations where one hospital is saying go to a different hospital, and that hospital is then, and they're calling for instructions after that handoff is made, and then what to do with those conflicting situations. And so we have tried to keep it sort of general discussion, because I don't think this is the place to talk about individual situations. But I think Dr. Borton was agreeing to sort of do some more research, and maybe we'll talk about this between now and the next meeting and try to see. Also, we should take a look and see if the collaborative protocols have anything in there forward that would give better direction as to this. I'm getting head nod that shakes it probably doesn't. But I think
this is one of the things in the collaborative, Brian, that's going to be left up to individual regions because of all the regional nuances. So I think that we can look into it further and then discuss it at the next meeting.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, collaborative protocols. So at the last WREMAC meeting, there was a discussion about requesting one vote to represent each of the 3 regional councils we have, rather than one vote to represent the one WREMAC that we have. That is my understanding that was proposed to the collaborative protocol group and was not accepted. It is a very collaborative group, and so true votes are actually unbelievably rare anyway. And I personally was one of the people who brought up this question, but I think now that it's been respectfully declined, let's say, by the collaborative protocol group, I think the benefits of joining the collaborative protocol far outweigh continuing the debate in the attempts to get more votes. I don't think it's necessary, and I think that we should go forward and forward the MOUs to our 3. We still have the regions have to approve, right? The regional councils or the REMACs? REMAC. So I would recommend.
That's a REMAC.
I would recommend that we go forward with signing the MOU with the collaborative protocol group to start moving forward with them. Any discussion on that, or any disagreement?
Brian?
Yeah, Brian.
Brian, I'll just add real quick, and I think we've talked about this a little bit. I know there's some, concern about losing our votes and our power, but anybody who's sat in on these and anybody who's had the CMAX and been involved knows that really seriously things do go to a vote, like you said. Even though we haven't signed the agreement, I think at the last meeting and even for the last year, we've given just as much input as any other region, and we've had more of our protocols adopted, or pieces of our protocols, or wording of our protocols adopted, even though we haven't formally joined the group. So I don't think that we have anything that we're going to lose. And ultimately, if there is any dispute or conflict, there is a conflict resolution clause in that MOU. And ultimately, all of these have to, again, get, not just pass through the collaborative group, but go to the CMAC and the Central for approval. And we still have those 3 seats on the CMAC also. So we're not really losing it. If you look at it that way, we still have those votes if we didn't agree or didn't like something. But I don't really foresee, because it is a true collaborative effort, I just don't see those conflicts and things coming up where it's going to be a big issue personally.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts, discussion? Is there a motion to instruct Dr. Walters to sign an MOU on behalf of the REMAC joining the collaborative protocol group?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Todd. Is there a second? Thank you, Alex. Any other discussion necessary? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries. Let's talk briefly about some of the how to operationalize this in the future. I know Dr. Walter sent an email to Lee Burns asking about the public disclosure, for lack of a better word, component of approval. Did you get a response?
I don't believe I got one from her. I guess the discussion, just to kind of update everybody on timeframes, that this comes from the collaborative group and what we discussed in the last meeting, is they want to have the kind of almost final draft is kind of out. The intent is to make some, they're scheduling another conference call in the next couple of weeks to go over some things, and the intent is to have kind of the final working version draft out by April 15th, so that we posted to different regions for a 30-day comment period, and then be taken to the CMAC at the May meeting. Now, that may mean that, we may not vote and approve this or adopt these or send them out for public comment in our region, so I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. However, we did discuss at previous CMAC, so once, the ALS protocol is approved in one region, another region can adopt it. So even if it hasn't gone out to our local hospitals for comment, then I can't see how it would be blocked or anything. So that's the plan as far as when actually, if this gets approved at the May CMAC, when it gets implemented and timeframes may vary a little bit from region to region, just based on meeting dates and protocol rollouts and things like that, and whether it's kind of one joint protocol rollout or whether we do things somewhat separately, maybe, maybe region by region. My feeling is that even if we come up with some type of educational module for the update, that we may still implement it at different time periods in different regions, just based on nuances, and it will probably be something where we say, if you are in service and your medical director approves, you can, start using it at this date, and then, however many days, once down the road, we set a drop dead date where everybody has to be in service and using it. But as far as that specifically about posting or public comments, that really hasn't been addressed by the state. The discussion from the collaborative group was they want to try and get these out by April 15th, so that at least the REMO and some of the other regions can adopt them and get them through the CMAC at the May meeting. Obviously, any comments that we get from either our regions, our hospitals, our providers, and that as we disseminate these, they're willing to kind of incorporate and look at during that time frame and stuff. They might get everything done by May.
Any questions about that or other thoughts about implementation? The fellows and residents from emergency medicine have started to go through the new and old protocols, and I know other people have done this in the past. I think Todd did this in one of the earlier versions, and we're still not on the final version, but even though there will probably be some collaborative protocol-wide education, I think locally it will help the implementation process if we have a document that helps guide people through some of the protocol changes. One of the things that came up that is most glaring is just there are areas where the protocol has not significantly changed, but just the wording has changed, or the key points have been added or dropped out, which doesn't necessarily mean that anything has really changed. It's just the things that are being emphasized have somewhat changed. And I think one of the challenges as we roll it out is to understand what actually is different and what's not. If there's a key point that said you should remember to do this, and that key point doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a bad idea before. It just may not be what was emphasized.
Is the plan to do what we did a few years ago with the park, with the voice of the park?
For the phone, the question was what's the rollout plan? I think the question will be what comes out of the collaborative group. At a minimum, locally, we will need a new protocol test. We need to operationalize a new protocol test. I don't know if there is going to be a collaborative protocol-wide one, or if we'll have to build our own. But at a minimum, that we'll have to do that, and then we need to further discuss how to work it, how to roll it out. But we will not. We're going to wait until after the May CMAC meeting to make a move on this. So we may vote on it in our May meeting, and then we need to still better understand what the timeline is ahead of that meeting, how fast we could possibly do it. Any other questions about future cloud protocol stuff? All right. Is there any other?
Brian, I
Yeah.
I have one more thing on the collaboratives.
Good, Brian.
One of the things that was discussed at the meeting was the AEMT levels. It was kind of a new level, and there are some things that maybe as we were going through in the meeting, that things that AEMTs could do, but weren't included in that level. I think just not intentionally omitted, but just because it's new. So there are a couple of people, AEMTs from our region, and there's several from across the state who are willing to kind of go through and look at that level specifically to see if, to make sure that they're pricing in the maximum of their scope, and that if there's anything that they're allowed to do that's not in there, that we can change that. So if anybody has a high-functioning AEMT or AEMT instructor that's interested in going through that, then have them email me in the next couple of days, and we're going to divvy up the protocols with the people across the state to look at it that way. I think that also, as you have the residents going through and kind of doing a comparison chart after that, then we probably, once we have the comparison chart, then we just need to make sure that somebody reviews that and goes through and looks at, are we making sure, make sure we're not losing anything that we've added that's evidence-based, that's new. I think in most cases we've looked through that, but there may be a couple things that we haven't done. So I don't know what your plan is after the residents review it. Do we want to have a subcommittee, a protocol subcommittee, then to review that document of the comparison?
Yeah.
What's your plan with?
Dr. Barton was going to lead those efforts along with the fellow to review them, and anyone who wants to help participate in that also is more than welcome to email Dr. Barton with your interest. All right. Any other?
Very good.
And the AMT seems to be the one thing that is really left in the final draft. Like otherwise, their protocols have pretty much reached their final look. So AMT may change, and obviously some things are under the paramedic line that move to the AMT line, which would still affect paramedics. But I think that's the main thing that's going to change between now and the time that this stuff goes to the state council. Any other business? All right. Thank you to Twin City for hosting us today. Is there a motion for adjournment? Thank you, Alex. All in favor? We're done. Thank you, everybody.